Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're listening on the podcast, my name is Peter Barber. I'm primarily a professional opera singer, music producer, and a bass vocalist. And just a couple days ago, I had the opportunity and the privilege to speak with Malinda. She is just an extraordinary artist, an extraordinary human being. The amount of love and light that she puts out there with her music and to her community is truly inspiring, and it was a joy to speak with her. We talk about her whole career, where she started, musical theater background, moving into the YouTube space, completely blowing up on social media, finding her niche, finding her true voice as an artist, and now all the way up to working with people like Avi Kaplan, who surely you all know, and even going on a full national tour that is coming up. She has dates throughout the fall, which is just incredible. She makes amazing music, she has a beautiful message, and we had a truly wonderful, valuable, educational, and fun conversation that I know you guys are going to enjoy. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Malinda. All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the YouTube channel or the podcast, wherever you are watching or listening. Today we have a very special guest. This is Malinda, who I'm sure you all are very familiar with, and I'm actually going to pass it over to her so she can give a little elevator pitch as to who she is and what she's currently up to.
Hi everybody. I'm Melinda, and I make folk pop music. I started making music more regularly in the Celtic music scene, and these days I just released my debut original album that is very folk pop, but you can hear the Celtic strains every once in a while. And I created a visual album alongside that, which premiered in Cinemark theaters across the country, which is very exciting. And I'm about to go on a 5.5 week headline tour across the U.S. And there will be trad music but mostly sort of fusion and exploration and what it is to hold the old and the new together. Yeah.
Amazing. Brava. Very good elevator pitch. Sometimes people end up, divulging their whole life story and then have to
Thank
kind
you.
of
I feel like I've had to get good at explaining to people what's going on with me because it has changed so much over the last like 10 years. Like my career has taken
yeah.
so many twists and turns that I have to be like, this is what's up now.
Yeah, no, and we'll get into all that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So actually, what is your like background and training? Like kind of where did you start? Did you go to school for music and then take it from there? What's your whole background?
Theater was like fundamentally where I grew up and what I had training in from like middle school through high school through college. I have my degree in drama. And I started playing Irish flute when I was 13 and started playing in pubs every second and fourth Sunday of the month. There was a wonderful teacher called Mitch Fanning who ran sessions specifically for teens. And so what that did was it created a community of teenagers who all wanted to hang out but also play Irish music, and it was a really wonderful way of just fostering our love for that culture while providing a good hang. And so I did that through high school, and then in terms of singing, like that all came from musical theater. And so I did professional theater for about 3.5 years when I like right after college, right out of college, in Washington D.C., which is a wonderful place to do theater. It's where I grew up, and so I didn't never thought that I would have just a career in music. But what I discovered was that music took everything that I loved doing and made it into one career. So singing, performing, acting, filmmaking was something I discovered when I was a teenager as well. Community building, business building, like all of those things are in that career specifically. And so I think that's why ultimately I've kind of settled on that. And I never thought I would write music, but here we are. So it's that career has encouraged me to expand beyond what I thought I was capable of doing, and I'm that kind of person. I'm someone who wants to get pushed and get expanded, and so that ended up being the place where I was happiest.
Fantastic. So you were actually training in musical theater
Yes.
and was like going to Broadway and doing the whole musical theater journey part of your original plan, perhaps?
100%.
Like move to New York and audition everywhere and cattle
Also,
call and
That was totally what I thought my life was going to be. And I did some of that in DC, which was great. But yeah, I think my younger self right now would be very confused as to why I'm not on Broadway, but would be like, how the hell did all the rest of that stuff happen? So I think for me, I got so lucky in that I was able to work with like Broadway professionals in New York City. By the time I was in high school, I did a program called Broadway Artists Alliance, which is a phenomenal program, really, really informative, and I felt like the odd one out there. There were a few of us, a few people who like didn't quite fit this mold of this industry, and that made me kind of go, okay, I don't know whether this is an industry in which I'm going to be fully celebrated as an artist.
Mm.
And so I found ways to like if someone was going to cast me in professional theater, they're looking for what I have to offer, which was great because it was kind of all or nothing, and I knew that going into it, but ultimately I knew that that was a very like there was just limited opportunities for someone like me because my voice is a little bit more folky. I don't have that like super
Mm.
vibe, and yeah, so I think the glitter rubbed off my feet really early, and I also have two parents who were in theater, and so they really encouraged me to understand that doing theater is having a life outside of the rehearsal room. Like they always really encouraged me to just expand my horizons and not get like super blinders on. And and so as a result, I just didn't really fit into the Broadway world, which because Broadway is all about having that blinders and having that focus, and I think I just yeah, I never really fit into that. And I would love to do it. I would love to do a Broadway show eventually. It would be so fun. But I miss theater dearly. But it ended up, music and YouTube just ended up taking over, and I was okay with that at the time.
Yeah.
Um,
That was my next question because you're obviously finding a ton of success outside musical theater and you're really carving your own path, which
mhm.
is so cool. And you have like full autonomy over the kind of music you make, which is like the dream.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
all that, I was still curious if part of you still had the bug to get back in like a musical theater setting.
100%. I think I absolutely do. For me, it would be a project by project basis because what happened was I played my dream role when I was 24, and I was
Which was what?
the girl in Once, and
Okay, great.
the trajectory from that is hilarious, by the way. So I grew up with the movie and loved it very much, and it really inspired like my senior thesis. I was always really inspired by the music from that show and that movie, and then got to do Girl as the in the world premiere of the DC version of the show, which was amazing. And after that, like music and YouTube were starting to just like the time I was spending, I really could only do one show a year, which when you're technically still early in your career is like not a great thing to tell other theater professionals.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of shooting myself in the foot in both senses of the word or in both senses of the two different careers I was pursuing. And so it just didn't make sense for me to do that anymore. And I didn't have those like that like project idea to kind of keep me going anymore. I was like, I kind of did what I set out to do in this phase of my career, and I feel like I can. And I had done a world premiere of Ella Enchanted, where I got to create the role of Ella, and that show is being done all over the country now. And like I'd gotten to do things that were were on my bucket list, and I was just like, I've kind of done what I wanted to do in this chapter, and so I think it's okay for me to move on and pursue something else. And I will probably come back to this at some point when there's other roles that I have honestly aged into, and I feel like I'm like a couple of years away from probably going back into something.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome that, I mean, you were finding success in the musical theater world,
yeah,
and then you had the conscious decision to kind of pivot towards this new thing that was finding a lot of success.
yeah. It was a very
Um,
conscious choice on that one. Yeah.
Very, very relatable. I'm kind of I'm like right on the cusp of launching into like the full-blown opera career.
Yeah,
Like
you're like doing the opera thing, which is so exciting and so cool.
totally doing it. So like yeah, like have been singing professionally for a few years, kind of while finishing up the training, kind of like a medical residency essentially.
Yeah.
But late August, I'm going to Arizona Opera, which is a really big regional company, to just perform roles with them for the next year. So it's like right there, and the last couple of years while like starting to build the YouTube channel while still in training, while trying to like say yes to everything,
Hmm.
has been pretty crazy. And I've kind of made a promise to myself because I want to do both, and I think I can do both.
Yeah.
But I promised myself I'm going to get to the full-blown career and kind of see what the landscape looks like and see what the time commitments look like,
Yeah.
and then kind of reassess.
I love that for you. I kind of did something similar. Because when I graduated college, I had two shows booked. And so I was like, okay, I'll do the theater thing for a year and then I'll, move to New York and pursue either theater or like YouTube. Like I want more of my income to come from YouTube at the time. And I realized pretty quickly that my YouTube channel was not in a place for me to really do that. And I also realized like once I started doing the shows in DC and was like, oh, I'll go in for this audition. Yeah, let me go into this for this audition. And then I started really going in for a lot more auditions and I was like, if I don't do this for my younger self who trained her entire life to pursue this career and this career specifically, I will really regret it. And this is the time to do it. And so I kind of put YouTube on this like little bit of a back burner. I got a day job to kind of help support the YouTube situation and also pursued theater at the same time. So I had like three careers going. And it was a very conscious choice to be like, I'm actually going to stick with this for a little bit. Like I want to see what this landscape is like. I want to see what's possible in theater for me. And initially I wasn't totally set on doing that. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to like, because YouTube, I'd just gotten my YouTube channel like 2.5 years prior to that. And so I was like, oh, this is like big new thing that has all these exciting things that I should do, right? And then it was like, actually, no, I want to let this grow at its own pace and not put any pressure on it, not put any creative or financial pressure on this thing while I pursue the career that I trained my whole life to do. And so the choice to enter it and the choice to leave it was both very conscious, and I feel really grateful that I got to do that.
Awesome. So like what were your YouTube? Okay, first of all, like what time was this, like 20 mid 2010s? Like what was the time period as you were finishing this up? And then what was your YouTube like at the time? Because obviously your YouTube is huge now. So like what was it at that point, like numbers wise?
So, well, that was my first channel. So
Okay.
my first channel, the what started it was I was a sophomore in college, and I was in the middle of like two different tech weeks because I'm an idiot. And I it was like 2 a.m. I was procrastinating on something, and I had just watched Let It Go in 25 different languages, and I was like, oh, I wonder what some of these are like in direct translation. And so I started putting the lyrics of Let It Go through Google Translate. And then I just sort of like kept translating them into other things, then back into English, and just sort of kept doing that until Let It Go became Give Up. And I was like, okay, this is hysterical. Like what else is possible? So I just kind of kept running it through stuff and created this basically AI parody, as if it like, tried to translate it back from other languages. And I made it into a video on like my lunch break and sent it to some friends, and they were like, dude, make this public right now. This is hysterical. And I did, and it had 1 million views in like a week on YouTube. And I had 50,000 subscribers like that week. Um,
Wow.
it was very speedy and very overwhelming, and I was like, well, gotta follow up, and but also it was a moment where I was like, I can sing and make films. Like I can do all these things that I love. And so I decided to pursue that and created the channel at the time Google Translate Sings. And it was a big thing. I hit 1 million subscribers, I think, 4 years ago on that. And I think when I graduated, I don't know where I was. But it was enough and I had, developed enough of a Patreon that I felt like I was somewhat supported, but not supported enough to like really pay the bills at the time. And so I really had to, I was grateful that I didn't put the pressure on that to pay the bills. And that was a wonderful time to get to do that channel because it was like being on a TV show that I had creative control over. Because I was never playing myself. I was very rarely ever playing myself. I was parodying other people. And so it gave me the opportunity to learn what it's like to have YouTube comments coming at you and develop that thicker skin to be able to deal with all that and to learn all of these things like technically, things about recording, filming, like editing, the algorithms, back end stuff, like doing that with a channel that wasn't like my baby, my artistry, doing that with a channel that was like, oh, this is so fun to do, was really, really useful. And I'm very grateful to that channel for how much I learned from it and the people I got to meet, people like Peter Hollins, Andrew Huang, Caleb Hiles, Jonathan Young, like just this big Brizzy Voices, Tessa Nutting, like big community of people that really supported each other along the way, and I learned the value of community and creators holding each other up from that phase of my career, which once I started going viral on TikTok became everything. And it was an important thing to actually teach other creators that I met, where it's like, no, we're here for each other. Like we have each other's back. We have to, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, that channel, I don't really make videos on there anymore, just because I don't have the time nor the particular interest at this point. But yeah, that channel had its life and was a big part of like people's nostalgia from that era of their lives, which I love. I just think it's so sweet. That people are like, oh, you were my childhood. I'm like, I love that. I just absolutely love that and think it's beautiful. But because it's such a part of that era, I'm like, we got to move on. We got to start doing something else. And so my new channel I started in 2017. And I was just kind of bopping around and like making sort of cute parody original songs. Like, not so much parody, but like, found material songs, very YouTube of that era type of music.
Hmm.
And I was starting to create singles and starting to do my own thing. I released an EP as a way of really learning how to write songs. Like that EP was me learning how to write. And with two of my amazing collaborators, Johnny Del Toro and Hannah Tobias. And really, really special, really fun. And then, like, beginning of the pandemic, like, first year of the pandemic, I was like, I don't really know where I want to go musically. Like, I'm just kind of wandering around. Like, I know I can still play the Irish flute, but like, what else? What else is there? And then TikTok came around and was just such a jolt of creative energy. And then the sea shanty trend happened, and I was like, oh, I know music.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was what just suddenly made me be like, oh, my Irish training has been staring me in the face this entire time, and there is an audience for it, and there's people who don't know they love it yet, but are, gonna come to a Melinda show because they like another song or whatever, and they're like, actually, this is a vibe.
Yeah.
I love being able to sort of be people's gateway drug into that world. And so that was, yeah, that's basically how that trajectory all happened.
That's amazing. So YouTube to TikTok, and then TikTok goes absolutely bananas with sea shanties and maybe this other kind of non-traditional or non like pop culture music, right? It's
Yeah.
like more like niche genre, but then you
Yeah.
find, oh, there's like billions of people on TikTok.
Yep.
Therefore, there are millions and millions of people that either do like this kind of music or will like this music
Yeah. Don't know they
once they
like it.
hear it. And it was amazing to see the sea shanties go off. Just
Yeah.
like completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
And
That
they
was,
just went absolutely crazy. I mean, you and Cullum and Bobby and like all these people just like absolutely blew up in a
yeah.
short period of time when sea shanties kind of went off.
Yeah. Yeah. It created a really, really special community of people. People like Bobby, Mia Sano, Ali the Piper,
Yeah.
Shanty Man, like Cullen. Like and on my first tour last year, we sort of all met in person for the first time and played together and sang together. So special. Like the people who come from that community are some of the most like big-hearted, wonderful human beings you'll ever meet. So being able to use the internet to connect with those people was so special. I never really expected that, but it was cool.
Amazing. And I remember, I feel like you were the first person to kind of get all these singers and instrumentalists together
Yeah.
in like a big collab. What was the first song you did that with?
Uh, Probably Hoist the Colors. I
Okay.
forget Hoist the Colors or Drunken Sailor came first. It was no, no, it was Hoist the Colors that came first. And that instinct to be like, guys, let's come together and make a thing came from me having a YouTube career. Because that's what you do on YouTube is you collaborate and you create things together. Whereas TikTok is like, you do it, which is great. And it creates these like, kind of found collaborations essentially.
Hmm.
But if you want to create like a product for people to consume and then be able to like split distributions and like actually have people build a career on this, it's like no, we gotta like someone has to spearhead this. And it was like I have the training, I have the motivation, I have the team literally to be able to do this for everybody. And so it made sense that that people like me and Calm and Cullen as well kind of stepped forward and was like, we're gonna start, putting things on platforms and making things happen because it was a way of us wanting to make this into a career,
Yeah.
and so yeah, being able to bring people together also in person on tour was just like I love bringing people together. I want everyone to have a good time. If I'm doing something and I'm making an experience, I want everyone to have a blast. And so being able to do that tour and to have that be so special for everybody was like that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. No, that's a great move because it really is a whole different ball game for just career and success to move something that's doing well on TikTok to something that's doing well on Spotify.
It's very difficult actually. People think it's so easy, but it's surprisingly hard. It is capturing lightning in a bottle in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a gun to someone's head to get them to go from like here, just click on this link. I swear you will love this song. Just click the link and watch it.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really hard. And sometimes it happens organically and you really can't control it and sometimes you have to like engineer it to occur and you might do it wrong and it might not, it might not take off in a way where it did on TikTok. Like that magic somewhere can get lost, in the platform translation. And so
Yeah.
it
It
happens.
helps though. I mean, if you find other like big creators that are all in on it together, that just kind of extends the possibilities
Yes.
or and the probability that something will go off. If you have a bunch of big creators all like, hey, we all did this thing together.
Yes.
And that's
Exactly.
become something people, like you said earlier, love to see. They love to see their favorite creators come together, even for something as simple as an interview.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
like listening to two people they like talk,
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I love
you
that.
know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the number of times that I've been just like hanging out with another creator and I'm like, should we just put a mic like in between us? Like I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this conversation. This is cool. You know.
Yeah.
No, that is definitely a YouTube mentality and the whole like in-person collaboration thing. TikTok actually like doesn't really like that. They're just like, why are you guys in the same room? Do it as a duet, and
Oh.
initially on the platform the algorithm wouldn't quite accept it when there were two people in the same frame. And if like we bulk filmed a couple videos together, only one of them would do well, and then they'd be like, "Is that the same video?" It was kind of hard to.
Oh.
Unlike YouTube, where it was like they would really push both those videos because like this is a collaboration, this is an expansion, yada yada. So it took TikTok a while to kind of catch up to the fact that this was something that the platform had the capacity to really push and to foster, which is like in-person community. And I think that was a little bit frustrating initially, but it's a little bit better now. It's a little bit better.
Good. Good, good, good. Good to hear. I'm like not savvy. I did TikTok for like a few months and I was like,
I'm
I'm
good.
so bad at I'm like, I've got one foot in the opera world, which is like the oldest form of music still being performed, and then one foot in the new world. And I couldn't be trendy. I'm just not, I'm just not in there enough.
I have yet to see an opera singer like, oops, I'm sorry. I'll turn this off. I have yet to see an opera singer figure out how to like make something super relevant on TikTok without it being like a parody of some kind.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's also a problem with Celtic music as well. Anything like that's old, you kind of have to like have a gimmick to make people pay attention to it,
Hmm.
or that's what a lot of people think, and so that becomes the expectation. But I also know that I have gotten on TikTok and just sang Shanos music in Irish. It's like y'all can't, most of you can't understand this, this is, hundreds of years old, and I'm gonna sing it in as traditional a way as I possibly can, and it blows up, and I trusted that this music can hold its own, you know.
Yeah.
And I think what I like to encourage musicians to do on TikTok is I'm like, trust your art. Like, you don't have to comment on it. Like, you can trust the fact that it's good, and particularly if it has stood the test of time, you know, it probably still has the capacity to connect with people if you do it in a way where you approach it from where you're at right now, you know. Like the way I sing Shanos is not the way that someone sang Shanos 100 years ago, but I'm approaching it from as authentic of a place as I personally can, and I think that, in addition to the fact that this is something that's so like ancient and time tested, is what makes people drawn to it. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I love telling people, especially people from like older traditions, I'm like, trust it, just trust it, you know.
Yeah.
And trust yourself with it, trust yourself to handle it, and to like show people why this is such a beautiful thing that you continue to do.
Yeah. It's certainly a goal. I mean, it's cool to be able to build a platform because I am trying to get more people listening to opera because
Yeah.
it is an amazing art form. The tricky thing about opera is that like the coolest thing about it is that it's people singing unamplified over an orchestra.
Yeah.
So it's like the voices are freakish, but it's only something you can really understand and fully appreciate in person. It's
Yeah.
just like it's like yelling at full volume, but in like a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And you just can't tell size of voice over recordings or mediums like that. That's actually why opera companies never hire unless you do a live audition. You get like virtual pre-screenings to get you in the room, but then you just can't tell what the voice does in like a huge space without a
Wow.
microphone until you're actually in the space.
That
So
makes
that's like one tricky thing about opera is like if somehow someone could watch a TikTok and be like and kind of understand how big and powerful that voice is,
yeah.
I think it would catch people immediately.
Wow, that's so interesting. I
Yeah.
feel that from I do a lot of like vocal improv stuff, and it's like you don't know how electric it is when you are in a room and you've spent like 5 minutes watching two people try to figure something out and then they get it. And it's like, we're not going to put that whole 5 minutes on YouTube, or we're not going to put that whole 5 minutes on TikTok. We're going to go put that moment. And it's like,
Yeah.
that isn't as good always, you know? It's hard to like communicate how good it feels to struggle and to like get somewhere, you know?
Huh?
Like there's plenty, and also I find this with like some folk songs on TikTok because story songs require your attention for some time. You
Mm.
know, you got to sit with it, and a lot of the music that I write, frankly, these days is music where it's like the payoff is really at the end of this song, and don't worry, I will get you there. And you will enjoy the journey along the way. But with TikTok, a lot of times they want like immediate grab and short kind of thing, and again, you gotta trust it. You gotta step back and you gotta trust it at the end of the day. And sometimes it pays off, sometimes it does not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to translate certain traditions to digital mediums, and that is also something that a lot of record labels I think don't understand is that TikTok and Instagram and like any kind of short form content, even YouTube, is its own medium and its own art form that requires a very specific set of skills that not every musician has inherently and not every musician wants to have. Like
Hmm.
not everyone wants to make content out of their stuff,
Yeah.
and I learned that through the pandemic. Because everyone was asking me like, how do I, do all this digital stuff? And I'm like, oh, well, this is what you do. And they're like, that sounds awful. And I'm like, that's my job. I was like,
Yeah.
right. But then I realized I was like, oh, you may not enjoy, doing tiny little edits and like,
Yeah.
like the payoff for that might not be exciting to you. And the idea of just sharing a little clip of your song, it feels like you're cheaping it or something like that. And I'm like, fair enough,
Hmm.
So I think it's both there's a challenge in translating music to the medium, and also just like the artists themselves being like, this doesn't serve my artistry, this doesn't serve my story that I want to tell, and the process of doing it is just not something I have any technical interest in, and I don't get joy out of that. And I'm like, if you don't, then like don't do it.
Yeah.
and I feel like there needs to be more room in the industry for people to be able to come up through different paths that are not social media. Because everyone's like, you gotta have social media. You got it, like that. We won't support your song if it doesn't go viral on TikTok. And it's like this shouldn't be the one way that people can be successful. You know,
Yeah.
you want to hold space for a lot of different people and different traditions and different backgrounds to be able to come up in different ways.
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be a sort of an expansion of all of that. I hope.
Hopefully so. Oddly enough, I mean, even in the opera world now, they are all the companies are pushing social media presence, all this stuff. Just, I mean, and it's like it's can be good for business, I suppose, for the companies if maybe their singers have a bigger following and they can sell a few more tickets.
It shouldn't be
But
on.
like that's not the most important part of
No,
certainly the opera world, and
no.
plenty of other genres as well.
I've definitely. I'm pretty sure I don't know if I've gotten a job because of my social media following, but it's been a factor.
Yep.
You know, it's definitely been a factor, I'm sure. And I have been pushed for publicity because of my social media,
Hmm.
but I can imagine, like, I know people who like go in for auditions, they ask you your social media follower count, and if it's not high enough, they just like let you go, and I'm like, that's awful,
That's awful.
awful. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like where are the priorities now for the
yeah,
performing art, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, I feel that. I feel that. It's pretty frustrating, but I do love it when people from things that shouldn't work on TikTok find a way for it to work. And it suddenly becomes this little corner of TikTok where you're like, it's something different and something very human, that I wouldn't
Yeah.
otherwise see. And so when someone does make it work, I just think it's remarkable and just reminds the internet of its humanity. I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I want to backtrack a little bit to the vocal improv because that's definitely a world I'm not familiar with. What does a vocal improv session look like? And like what kind of what skills are useful for that medium? And like, is there any prep work or do you just go out on stage completely freelance? Like educate me on this subject.
For sure. So, this kind of vocal improvisation that I do comes from people like Bobby McFerrin and Rhiannon and
Mm, love him. I did get to see him in concert a while back and it was phenomenal.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Genius.
Oh my God, he truly is a genius. And so this work stems from him and the people who learned from him mostly, and but also like sort of a mix of cultures that Bobby was drawing from and other people like him. And the person I learned it from was Matt Goldstein, who is now a facilitator and teacher across the country, but he founded a group that I was kind of a part of, like building, called Gaia Music Collective in New York City, and it has blown up on TikTok because they found a way to translate what it feels like to have a really cool improv moment and a really cool spontaneous moment in a group onto TikTok because they've just done a really good job of that, and I'm so excited for what that organization has the capacity to do. But what it's taught me as an artist is like a jam session looks like there's usually some kind of a call and response. There's like a tune up, and then it's kind of like live looping in a way. People will find like motors is what they're called, where you will find something that you can kind of repeat and hang on to. And then sometimes there's a conductor who will like cut people out, bring people back in, teach people new parts to be able to go somewhere else. Or it can be way freer than that. It's jazz. It's jazz vocal improv, but with a whole lot of other cultural influences from like West African stuff to super folky stuff to very jazz. Like it's very wide range. But the whole point is that you are not judging what's coming out of your mouth. You could make the most ugly sound in the world, and it would like still sound pretty fire. And it's a great place. It was a place for me as an artist to stop judging myself and to get out of the critical brain, and to also hone the critical brain when it does come back in, and being able to know like when something is really special. So that was a super useful tool for me, and I ended up incorporating some folks from the Gaia Circle into my visual album. We did a live version of one of the songs, where in the movie they were like singing together, and two different sections of the song I did not know what was gonna happen. And we filmed it basically documentary style. We had three different cameras going. We had, all these mics, and so I just told my friends, I was like, "Here's the bass line," and it was absolutely stunning. And it's the best moment of the film. It's like the heart of the film because we captured just what happened. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long because we just sort of explored a little bit, and it's really, really beautiful. And I think that kind of singing is becoming is having a little bit of a renaissance right now. I think it's a kind of a response to the pandemic in a way. It has roots in like there's a comparison to sort of spiritual or religious music because there's a repetition, there's a group mentality, but there's nothing organized about it. And so a lot of people feel like they can sort of let go of that side of their brain, that organized religion side of their brain, and just be able to experience what it is to be in community and be in a moment with people, and to access something that is definitely bigger than themselves because we don't know where these ideas are coming from,
Right.
And I think that is incredibly special and something that I always want to come back to. And the way I integrate that into shows, I'm kind of exploring that right now. I'm using it a lot to generate. So I'm doing an improv a day right now, and like improvising a full song every day. And I'm kind of going back and being like, oh, was that cool? Do I want to actually like write from this? I'm using it. I use it as a way of arranging all the time. It's also how Irish tunes are written. To just like people just sit across from each other and just like play at each other until they find something they like, and they're like, that's an Irish tune. So the seeds of improvisation are so universal in so many different cultures, and I want to try and harness that a little bit, and do a lot of like I've been doing a lot of like audience singing in my last shows that like making people sing in harmony with each other and create drones and create chords, and kind of Jacob Collier does a lot of this stuff, and yeah, it's just been a blast. It gets people into that mentality of like the audience is collaborating with us right now, including if they're not even singing. Like especially if we're improvising, it's like none of us know, and we're all on this cliff's edge together.
Yeah, yeah.
Something- There's something very, very exciting about that, and yeah, so that's something that I want to integrate more into my music but while acknowledging like how much that actually integrates back into Irish music because that's how that music is generated. So I think it's
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome. Okay, that was like a little master class on
I
on vocal improv.
was like, how do I explain this? I haven't had to explain this very often, but normally Matt's been with me to explain it a lot better than I can. So
Great.
yeah.
Um, Gosh, the kind of getting out of your own head and just like trusting your voice is something that every opera singer on planet Earth
Yeah.
needs to get way better at because it is an art form of like perfection. I mean,
Mm,
like the vocal technique and just I mean to be able to do it, to be able to sing with an
yeah.
orchestra without a mic, you have to be like it's like complete vocal efficiency and perfect breath support all the time. And like so it's an art form where, we've had, going up to university and whatever training and like, these all these coaches we work with who have worked with, some of the greatest opera singers, there is this absolute gold standard that we're
Mm,
being held to. So one of the hardest things for opera singers is to, once you get out on stage, just fully trust the technique and
yeah.
be in character. And you will always sing better if you do that. And you're not like, think about the technique in the practice room, but like once you get to the performance, just like let go. It's something that younger singers especially really struggle with. I definitely have gotten much better at it over the last 10 years, but definitely am not perfect at it by any means. So maybe I'll pitch some vocal improv classes to some of these programs I'm involved in. It might be really helpful for us.
Totally. I think that's really true. I think it's useful for literally anyone in any field. I think it's useful for anyone. But it's
Period.
particularly useful
Yeah.
for other artists because yeah, I can imagine it's also like for opera it's a question of like safety. And
Sure.
is
Yeah.
the gold standard, is that developed by people who came before you, or like is there pressure to sing like the person who originated the role or something like that?
Sometimes there is. If you do really popular music, like if you sing a really popular Mozart aria,
Mm,
and like for me, like every great bass in opera before me has sung that aria, and there are certain inflections are ways to use the text or cadenzas to add in that people have done before. That you
Yeah.
will always be compared to those people. A
Mhm.
good coach or a good teacher will be able to extract what your voice does best and differently than those people, and then make the best version for you, as opposed to saying, well, you're not singing it as well as Samuel Ramey or Cesare Siepi or one of these great basses. But absolutely, especially audiences too, audiences, older audiences who heard a lot of those singers, say in the 80s or 90s,
Yeah.
and then you get up on stage and sing an aria differently than what they're used to and what they've loved for the last 40 years.
Mhm.
That's a tough it's tough to get them on your side if you want to do something differently.
Yeah, I experience that in Irish music a lot. As
Sure.
you know, because there's people who are really like guardians of the tradition, and I have overstepped at times. Like and the ways in which I've overstepped have been the moments where I forget that, because like I know that you shouldn't look to me for super trad music. But the moments where I feel like I let people down is when I don't remind people enough of that. Where I don't acknowledge the fact that, like, if I'm lilting a tune, which that sounds like like that kind of stuff. And when I do it, I'm not going to sound like that. Like, I'm the way that I lilt is it integrates a lot of like jazz and stuff like that. And I'm like, I've had to be like, don't look at me to know what lilting sounds like. Like, that's not even Shanos, like where people from Ireland, you know, will say like, no, she's good at it. I'm like, yeah, but I don't sing it like them, you know. And so sometimes, like, if I overstep a little bit, or if I say something that is a little bit, more like Americanized or something like that, it can make people mad, and I fully respect that, because people do want to guard a tradition that is hundreds of years old, and it's an oral tradition. Like people see me as being a part of the oral tradition because I have a platform. The oral tradition is getting spread and passed down in very different ways now, and I have a responsibility for that. Um, and I have a responsibility to evolve the tradition, because traditions, if they don't evolve, they die. And so I want to be very clear about, like, if you're interested in stuff that is like super trad, these are the people to look at. If you're interested in trad influenced stuff and stuff that kind of like toes the line and explores what trad has the capacity to do, then these are the people to look at, including me, and being very clear about that and very upfront about that in my storytelling I've realized how important that is.
Yeah.
And thankfully, like my peers in Ireland have a lot of like respect for that, and they do a lot of the same thing, and I get really excited by that.
That's great. And I mean, of course, as you know, there's always going to be people who are going to fully support pushing the boundary a little bit and like kind of evolving the genre. And there are always going to be the people that say, like, you have to do it.
It's not the tradition.
It's not the
I'm
tradition.
I'm playing an Irish music festival, my first Irish festival, on tour, like in the middle of tour. And it's really exciting, but I have no idea what I'm about to be met with, because the rest of the bands on that roster, I'm like, no one else is using tracks. That's just me. Okay. Like, definitely no one else is going to be like leaping across the stage in the way that I am,
Yeah.
and giving a pop show, but there's Irish flute and fiddle. Like, and I've seen, shows like that before, but they're a lot more trad, and I'm just like, oh man, we're bringing something really different that, and we'll cater that set to be like a little bit more trad, but it'll be really interesting to see how the audience there reacts, and I'm sure there will be people there who will walk away from the set being like, that was not what I thought it was going to be, and that doesn't belong here. But then there will be people who will be really excited about it, and so I just have to accept that.
Just stick to your guns, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, opera is probably a lot of the same thing, where it's like, I'm gonna sing this way, and like part of the audience is not gonna like it, and some people will be
Yeah.
really excited. So
Yeah.
there's payoff if you take a risk of doing something new and you do it right. It's like, it's so exciting.
Absolutely. And to give your best performance, you have to do with what is like in your heart
Yeah.
and in your core. Like if you are trying to, in my case, trying to sing an aria just the same way, or trying to, especially like a cadenza, trying to
Hmm.
do like a cadenza the same way someone else did it. If you feel like that's how you really want to sing it, great. But if
Yeah.
you're doing that just so that the audience is going to be happy, you're never going to sing it as well,
Yeah.
because you're like, I'm doing this for, you can do it for both you and the audience, but like you have to want it and feel it.
Yeah.
Like those notes have to come from somewhere. It can't just be like, okay, this person did it this way, so I'm going to copy them.
Yeah.
It won't be the same.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. Who are some of your biggest musical influences,
Mm.
vocally, instrumentally, artistically? Like growing up, I'm sure you have a number from a number of different genres, so maybe you can just pick a few here that have really kind of transformed your artistry.
100%. Eva Cassidy is like the first and foremost for me. She was a folk singer slash gospel slash jazz singer, and what I always loved about her was that genre was, she could do anything. Her production, like she probably the most people she probably played for was like 200 people. And then she passed away sadly of cancer when she was like 33, I think. And after she died was when her cover of Somewhere Over the Rainbow like blew up and the rest of her music became really popular and people, now see her as this vocalist that just no one came close to her. Um,
Hmm.
and I agree with that. I think her vocals are some of the most extraordinary vocals in the world and she was when she sang jazz, she sang like a trumpet and she sang like an instrument, which is something that in Irish music, singing like an instrument is something that people think about all the time. And I heard that in her, but in jazz, and Ella Fitzgerald kind of did the same thing. And Ava, because she had this sort of cross genre voice that could sing folk, that could sing jazz and sing gospel, I admired that so deeply. And she worked with people like Chuck Brown and like really wonderful people from DC. She's from my hometown, just outside of my hometown. So Eva Cassidy, I had like a iPod shuffle of entirely like deep cuts of Eva Cassidy. Obsessed. Eva, and then Karen Casey is an Irish singer, really iconic Irish singer and songwriter. She was the person that I grew up like kind of wanting to sound like, and how I learned Irish ornamentation was by listening to her. So Karen Casey was sort of my Irish singer influence. I loved how she had, the Irish like lightness, the way she sang, but she had this like rah in her voice that some Irish singers like Celtic Women doesn't have a lot of rah.
Mm.
Celtic Women is fire. I love Celtic Women,
Mm. Yeah.
but there is a grit to Karen Casey's voice that I had too, and so I wanted to like imitate that and explore that. Um, Ava McMahon, who is now a friend of mine, she was in Celtic Women, and her voice is just absolutely extraordinary. She's a more recent influence. Hosier, I think, is truly one of the most extraordinary writers, and again integrates folk, gospel, funk, jazz, everything into what he does. Rock, like I just think he's really brilliant. And then Brandi Carlile is also a new influence in that. I love her music. Her music is like sort of, country rock folk. But the shows that she puts on are the most community oriented. Let's bring a whole bunch of people together in celebration, essentially. Like when she goes on tour, there's so many people on stage with her and so many musicians that just like basically travel with her, that are their own artists, and she celebrates them on stage. And I want to have the amount of passion that she has at her age and the amount of community orientation that she has at her age, and generosity of spirit that she has. I just think that the way that she has organized her music making around her and the experience that she gives to her audiences it's really unparalleled and so brilliant. So yeah,
Awesome. It sounds like you're doing that. Like you're
that's the goal.
actively bringing in artists, yeah, to share their artistry.
Right on.
Have you heard of a singer named Veronica Swift, perchance?
I've heard of the name, yeah.
Definitely, definitely check her out. So she's a good friend of mine. We actually were in a jazz singing group all the way back in high school together.
Nice.
But she's like one of the leading, like amazing jazz singers of this era.
Oh, cool.
But she's also super in like her whole thing is transgenre. Like
Mm,
that's like all she's been working on the last few years. Like she performed in the Hollywood Bowl as like a rock singer, but
nice.
she is unparalleled as a jazz singer, and the scatting and the musicianship. Like every time she opens her mouth, I'm just like, this is absolute like wizardry of the voice and musicianship. So check her out, and I might try to connect you to because I think you
Yeah,
would. I mean, she's always on tour, like all around. She do you know? I don't know if you know Chris Body. He's like probably the world's most famous trumpet player. She like goes on world tour with him and stuff like that.
nice. Oh,
Um,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you would. I guarantee you would love everything that comes out of her mouth. So I'm gonna have to figure
yeah.
that out.
I am so ready to check her out. That sounds amazing.
Awesome, awesome. Um, instrumental background. What instruments do you play, and do you record all your own instruments for your songs? And what's the deal
No, I'm not that good.
there?
I grew up loving the sound of the Irish flute very specifically, but my mom wanted me to learn silver flute first. So I played silver when I was like 8 to 13, and then finally got my first like dinky plastic Irish flute when I was 13. Started taking lessons and playing in pubs, and like that was it. So I played that really consistently until college, and then I didn't really have an outlet to be able to continue. And so I lost a lot of the skill set, and so only in the last like 2 or 3 years have I been trying to pick that back up and really trying to dedicate myself to being able to play like whistle and flute more effectively. I learned guitar mostly in college to be able to play in a show, and that's what I write on. I write on guitar. I just got a vocal looper, and I've been writing on that as well, which has been so fun. And yeah, so I write on guitar. I write on my baritone ukulele every once in a while. I have a bazooka here too that sometimes I'll layer in. Sometimes I record my own stuff. Mostly I don't because I'm like, if there's people who can do this better, I'm going to hire them.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, no, this is supposed to be kind of raw and like
Mm,
does it shouldn't sound that good, and so I'm gonna play it, you know. Like my single "I'm Not There Yet," I produced that whole thing and played everything on that. And yeah, so there's a little bit of that every once in a while. But if there's flute, that's definitely me. And yeah, piano I had to learn. I took piano lessons when I was younger and had to relearn for once. And don't ask me to play anything else other than chords or the score from once because
relatable, relatable.
that's all I know. I can't play like pieces on piano. My hands don't do that anymore. But I can like arpeggiate and like accompany myself with chords if I need to.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Okay, how did you get involved with Avi Kaplan, and what has that experience been like for you?
Oh, he's such a gem. We collaborated last year. He found me on social media, and I messaged him and was like, "Hey, you're really cool," and and so I went up to Nashville. I went to his house and we recorded a couple of collabs and just talked about life mostly. And he's a really really lovely human being, and I think I've always really admired. And I told him at at his show, I was like, I watched you when I was younger make a choice to leave something that was really successful, which is pentatonics, and do what was healthiest for you. And I have done that time and time again in my career, and you were one of the examples of that when I was younger. And so thank you for that. And so, you know, that I have a lot of respect for him in that he has done, and you know, creating things like Acapella Academy, like he
Yeah,
has exactly what brings him joy and the kind of impact that he wants to have on the world, and has catered the people around him and catered the structures around him to be able to do that. And I just have a ton of respect for that. So yeah, massive respect. He's a great guy, and
awesome.
yeah, excited to see what else he comes up with.
Yeah, no, I would expect nothing less just from everything I've seen.
Oh yeah, yeah, really,
He
really,
seems he seems truly wonderful.
yeah, really good-hearted guy.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, before we go on, how much time do you have?
I'm
I
chill.
don't want to. You're good. You're free.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. So I would ask like a day in the life question, but you do so many things. I wonder if like a week in the life might be a more interesting breakdown.
Hmm.
And I
Uh,
know it changes week to week and all that, but like, if you had to create like a template for your week.
I'll give you a week in the life of me right now,
Yeah, great.
which because it depends on what's going on. But what's happening right now is I have just released an album and we are prepping for a tour. And that tour is going to be long, it's going to be intense. And so my week generally looks like I wake up, I always have a slow morning just so that I can kind of get my brain moving. and I try to move or work out pretty much every day. I have a personal trainer, and we work together. We work together once a week, but I do his workouts 3 times a week. And so I'm really working on supporting like my joints and whatnot to be able to like jump around and move and dance on tour and not get hurt because I am prone to that. And then on days where I'm not doing that, I'm either downstairs like on the treadmill singing, because that is a way of like mimicking what adrenaline does to me and being able to like hold my voice and like hold myself. Because something that I discovered when I did my last show at the Birchmere in Alexandria, it was like, my first time I'd done a show since tour, like a year prior, and the audience was much louder and much more excited than on the last tour that we had done, just because there were a lot more people. And I, my friend was like, I got to watch your body process the first 20 seconds of the show, like the first couple songs, and I was like, I don't want to have to play anymore. Like I want to like hold myself like steady and be able to like continue to perform and do my job and not, be overwhelmed. And so training on a treadmill is a way to prep for that. Or I'm in a dance studio locally, and I'm literally like moving to my own music and trying to sing through it and finding like what feels good in my body to be able to perform. So it's a lot of like training for tour. And then later in the day is either I am improvising or shedding singing if I can. I'm not very good at practicing these days, but I'm trying to. I need to be trying to develop that skill and that consistency. And I'll sometimes shed flute. Sometimes I'll go to an Irish session locally to like pick up some tunes and just get humbled generally. um, Sing a little bit in person for people, or I'll go to a Gaia session if it's happening. And then, yeah, there's the admin stuff as well. And I think the admin stuff is the stuff that's the hardest. And it's like our team being amazing and being like, hey, we need you to create these, like, these videos specifically for these cities on tour. And like, here's a list of the cities. Can you just do that? And like, working with contracts and all of that, and even just like developing the show and making sure that everybody feels supported in that. And a big part of doing what I'm doing is having a team and being able to delegate and being able to communicate with people what's needed, what needs to happen, when it has to happen. But also be in an industry where a lot of things happen last minute and a lot of things change, and how to navigate that interpersonally with people and treat everyone, including yourself, with kindness as that happens. And yes, I'm imperfect at that, as is everybody, but you always have to take accountability for what happens. And I think admin is where all of that goes down. It's where all of the so the strategy kind of occurs. And so I would say, oh, and there's also filming. So like I film like once or twice a week in bulk, and filming days are always a little tough, but once I get them going, it's fun. I'm trying to find ways to integrate filming more into the rest of my life so I don't have to have like designated time to do it, but that's hard to do. And yeah, I'll film and edit sometimes in the evenings, but yeah, I have like content sessions where I get a bunch of things done, because if I there was a time where I was filming every day and I was like, that's not the no, that's bad. So
Yeah.
I need to have space to be able to do other things. So I try to get it all done in a day if I can.
Awesome. Piggybacking off that into needing space, do you have anything you do to just like turn the brain off? Guilty pleasures like reality TV or anything like that? Hobbies outside of music?
Yeah, I mean, scrolling is sometimes good. For a period of time. Uh, it's good for a short period of time. So I'll do that, but I also have a couple of YouTube channels. Like I like to watch cooking shows on YouTube. I
There
love
you
like
go.
Joshua Weissman binging with Babish. There's a woman named Yona Yinson who is this like homestead photographer, painter, singer, everything in the middle of nowhere in Sweden, and I I love her content. So whenever she releases something, Ava Zubek, who's like a travel YouTuber, I find her videos to be absolutely fascinating. Kurskazat, the
Oh
vlog,
yeah.
if I want to like stimulate my brain.
Hmm.
Basically, it's like moments where I feel like I've maxed out in some way and I need to take a break, I just ask my brain, like, what do you need? Like, do you want to take a walk? Do you want to stretch out? Do you want to lie and take a little sound bath with your headphones? Like, what do you want to do? And I also find that having a social life, like being able to hang out with people, is. I realized that I wasn't an introvert during the pandemic. And that was like a revelation for me. I was like, wow, I need community and humans really, like,
Mm.
real bad. And so I really prioritize that. And so I have a social event at least 5 nights a week, if not more, or 5 days a week, because seeing people and talking to people is like really essential for my mental health. I find that when I don't do that, I'm sad. Every once in a while, I have to just like when I was editing my visual album, I had been around human beings for one reason or another for like 4 months. Like it was a very intense 4 months of just needing to be with people. And when I edited that film, I was in my apartment for like 10 days. I talked to people on the phone, but I didn't see anyone else and didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything else other than edit this film. And I literally like heard my thoughts again. It was so beautiful. And I think, there are moments where you need to turn your brain off, but there are moments where even like through doing certain creative things, like my way of like giving myself a break is to improvise with my looper. Like sometimes your artistry can be a way of giving your brain a break. It's just your brain just needs something different.
Yeah,
It's not like mindlessness is the only way to like heal from burnout, or something like that. It can be
definitely.
fantastic, but
Definitely. I totally agree about the introvert versus extrovert thing. I was the same. I mean, I've always loved and appreciated my alone time,
Mhm.
but yeah, I did not realize how often I needed to be with people because, like, in high school, you're with people all the time, college, you're with people all the time. If you're in a program, you're with people all the time. It's
Mhm.
when something like the pandemic happens where you're not naturally going to be with people and you're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
didn't realize I needed that. For me, it was actually I had my brother around and I had a couple of friends around during the pandemic. We just kind of stayed in our little bubble.
Yeah.
But I actually faced that. I was in Philly about a year and a half ago where we were doing an opera and like halfway through the opera, like everyone got COVID. And
Yeah.
I was living in a little studio in an apartment complex in Center City. And I remember I would just like didn't leave the studio or I didn't
Yeah.
leave the apartment complex for like 3 days and I was like losing it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I did
So,
2 weeks here quarantining in my studio apartment to see my parents during the pandemic, to be able to go back with them. And those 2 weeks, I remember literally my parents were driving up to New York to come get me, and I was pacing like a cheetah. Like it was, isolation is not, is real bad.
oh, it's not. That's not
It's
good.
awful. It's so bad. But yeah, so I definitely learned that. And I learned that like regular socializing for me is a good thing. Like I used to see it as something that could drain my energy, and now I'm like, dude, that literally it gives you energy at times.
Hmm.
Depends on the situation, but it allows you to recharge effectively. So yeah, I'm glad you were able to. It must be interesting being in a, like, you've always been with some kind of institution. Like, did you go from high school to college to opera programs? Yeah, like you're consistently with an institution of some kind?
Yeah, I've always been with something. So yeah, undergrad started at U Miami in Florida for a couple years, finished at James Madison in Virginia, then did my master's at University of Southern California, Los Angeles, and doing these summer programs like the one I'm at now, and then Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia, which is like the kind of residency
Mm-hmm.
version of the opera world, and then
Yeah.
headed to Arizona
Right.
next year, which it's still part of an institution.
Yeah.
It's a little different. It's freer. There's not going to be like all this training and stuff, but it is still with
Right.
an institution. So I will have, yeah, so I'll have colleagues baked in.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
That's some.
different thing.
Yeah, it's super different because for me, I have to create my institution. I have to create the community of people around me, and I have to be a part of other institutions in order to feel like I am fulfilling that like social need. And I feel like in New York we call them villages, and I like people talk about the Melinda Village. It's big, and it's super big, and some people are really deep in it, and some people are kind of peripheral, and you are so welcome wherever you are. Yeah, Melinda Village has a lot of overlap with Gaia Village. Gaia Village is huge, and there's sort of villages within villages there. I've gotten to know Samurai and the Friends super well. I feel like I'm a part of their village. Other artists that kind of come through my like the YouTube village, the TikTok village. It is so important to like Mia and Ali and Bobby and I like we kind of have our own village too. And so it's a way of it's a way of like finding or organization a little bit in your life and in your artistic life, and being able to lean on those people and being able to like pass work between everybody, and lift everybody up. Like it's very rising tides, raise all ships kind of thing. But there is no one who is organizing those institutions specifically, and
Yeah.
I think that's something that I had to get used to after I graduated college. Was it was like, oh, this is entirely up to me. That's fun, and then you just have to have a
Hmm.
lot of self motivation.
Yeah.
And I know some people who really like the structure of various institutions and will constantly pursue that. And I have a ton of respect for that. But yeah, that ended up just not being the way that my career was going to organize itself, and I had to kind of accept that,
Yeah.
after.
Do you see yourself living anywhere else, or you said you're in New York right now?
Yeah,
Do you see
yeah,
yourself being in New York for the long haul?
yeah. I see myself being in New York for the long haul, to be honest. There's just too much here, and too many things that can surprise you, and too many things that can make you grow and expand. Like I recognized when I was in DC before I moved to New York in 2019, I was like, if I stay here, where I grew up in particular, but also in this city, I don't think I'm going to grow into the person that I know I have the capacity to be. And in New York, you don't even like New York challenges the notion of what you have the capacity to be. Like it pushes you in so many ways, and it gives you so many opportunities to really question that. And it is very conveniently located between all the places I like to go. And so like I have relatively easy access to Ireland and easy access to DC and LA, and the people here are so dedicated to what they do, and really kind-hearted, and yeah, I really see myself being here for a really really long time, and I'm loving being a part of New York neighborhoods too, like particularly in Brooklyn. Brooklyn, once you get away from Williamsburg, you really are a part of a neighborhood, and it gets pretty intimate, and I love that, and I want to be a part of that. So I think Brooklyn is going to be my long haul place. I do want to have more of a relationship to Ireland, particularly the West Coast, which is where all the musicians hang out. So I do want to develop my relationship to that place. Maybe have a place there that is like partly an Airbnb, partly a community center, or something like that. Working in collaboration with people who actually live there, because if I was just to come in and like run an Airbnb, that's like contributing to a lot of the problem that Ireland currently has. But it's like I don't want to contribute to that problem. I want to like, encourage community development there, locally if I
Yeah.
can. So that's
Is
like
that,
a long-term dream.
yeah, I was going to say, is that something you're actively looking at or something you see down the road?
I mean, I'm actively looking at it for like 10 years from now. So
Yeah, right.
it's in the back of my head, but it's not gonna happen anytime soon. I gotta make sure I can live first.
Yeah, for
Getting
sure.
into it is super expensive, and
Yeah, New York is not cheap.
near it
Yep.
isn't. But I think you recognize what the trade-off is by living here, and the trade-off is the people, and the opportunities you have to learn from those people. So yeah,
Awesome.
it works for me. I like it.
Awesome. Great. All right. We're going to move into the final segment of our chat, which is going to be questions from some patrons
Let's do it.
that are big fans of yours.
Woo.
All right. First, this is from Mortius. I don't know if you know who Mortius is, but he's a fellow in the kind of reaction analysis sphere, and he's a big fan of your work.
Oh, cool.
So here we go. Melinda has had an incredible self-made journey through many different genres and musical adventures to earn where she is today. What does she wish she had known earlier in that journey? And what would she share with any listeners who aspire to pursue their own online musical journey?
Oh my God, there's so many things I wish I'd known.
Good
Yes, this is a big question, man.
question, Mortius. Bravo.
Good question. Hello. What do I wish I'd known? Um, I wish I had, well, I mean, here's the thing. Part of not knowing and part of being naive gets you into some really cool situations that you learn a lot. And so there's a part of me that wants to say, actually, the fact that I didn't know things like gave me really valuable lessons, but also gave me really interesting products, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, I wish this is so basic, but I wish I had stayed in either guitar lessons or piano lessons through high. I wish I could support myself better as a musician in that way. I think as a singer in particular, I think it is incredibly useful. So that's just like a basic. Um,
Maybe we could modify it slightly towards what are a few really big things you learned that have been extremely valuable? Because I'm
um,
with you. It's like it's
yeah,
best to go through life. You don't want to regret, you
yeah,
want to be happy with how you've gotten here, right? So
yeah. I feel
some
like
big things you've learned, maybe.
yeah, fundamentally, I'm pretty happy with how I got where I am. But in terms of things that I learned, I would say um, that chasing something that you want is gonna lead you to a different place, probably, and that is okay and good. And to be very open to whatever that is. Also, it's so cheesy, but no one can do you the way that you can, and being authentic and being yourself is is everything. It really is. And constantly being open to the fact that you're going to change in front of people if you're pursuing an online thing. You're going to be changing and growing, and you need to acknowledge that and give yourself a lot of grace. So being able to be yourself and be authentic on the internet requires a level of vulnerability that you have to be able to foster in yourself. And you can choose like what that vulnerability looks like with your audience. And I've definitely like evolved that boundary as I've grown up, but I've also had to be very willing to change in front of people, and so fostering that ability in yourself is really important. The other one, this is probably the biggest one. This is the one that I tell people all the time, actually. Um, the internet is get what you give, completely. The internet is get what you give, and I I learned this by watching. I did a music video with Thomas Sanders, and when I watched it get released, Thomas is like the most just loving, self-aware, beautiful human being, and his audience is so creative and queer and kind and wonderful and accepting. And I got to witness that audience when I released this music video, and they really loved it, and I got to watch them get creative with my art, and it was so wonderful. And I was like, this makes so much sense for this creator, you know. And then like a couple weeks later, another creator who shall not be named tagged me in a video because he like used an arrangement of one of my, or he used one of my songs. Um, and this creator is marred by extreme scandal and kind of, you know, not being the best human being. And their audience was so mean to them, like
Mm.
straight up mean and mean to each other. And I was just like, what? And that to me was just so indicative of you set the standard for your audience. You set the standard for how people are going to treat each other and how people are going to treat you. And I people always like when they come to a Melinda show, and particularly like the premiere of my movie, people were like, the room was so kind and so like interested in what everyone had to say and just so curious and open-hearted. And I'm like, yeah, because I tell people to do that like openly,
Hmm.
and if someone isn't that, I block them. You know, like I'm very, you don't have to be accepting of everything that comes into your space when it comes to the
Yeah.
internet. You can actively create standards and rules for how people behave in your community, because especially once you get into in person, you want to create a good experience for people, and you will not be for everyone. And so whatever you give out, you're going to get back. And if people are giving you stuff that you don't want and that you're not giving out, it's okay to say, you know what, I really don't want this in my space. So yeah, the internet is get what you give. You set your standards for how you get treated, and and if you feel like, and I had a moment where I felt like I wasn't getting treated the way I wanted to be. I was getting like hypersexualized
Mm.
by like a lot of people in like the sort of folk world who sort of
Mm.
saw this like fantasy Lord of the Rings siren character,
Sure.
and I very vocally was like, "You don't fucking do that. You don't do that to me." And I actually like catered my art a little bit away from that because I was just like, "Nope, we're not doing this." And if I see people doing that, I block them. I just don't care at this point.
Yeah.
Like you can enjoy my work, absolutely, but if I'm getting a marriage proposal or I'm getting hypersexualized, I will block you. Like it's no.
Yeah. Totally fair.
And you can do that in a way that is cute and good and fun, but a lot
Yeah.
of times I was getting some like very creepy stuff, and
Yeah.
a lot of people in my position, like in the same field, were getting that too, and so I knew, like as a creator, I was like, if I don't nip this in the bud right now, I'm gonna run into problems down the line.
Mhm.
And I will die on that hill of like you set the standard for how you get treated, and your art sets the standard for how you get treated too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great advice. Mortius, great question.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, this is from Jan Cates down in Australia.
Hey.
The collab with Violet Orlandi for Icy Fire improved that song, in my opinion, and your
Nice.
voices complemented each other perfectly.
Uh,
How do you decide who to collaborate with? What is your hell yes, and what is your hard no to requests?
oh no.
We just heard a little bit about the hard no for sure.
Uh, yeah. Well, how do I decide who I want to collaborate with? Are they good at what they do? Um, is kind of the main one. Um, have they, and I think there is a little bit, particularly with where I'm at, I'm like, have you proven yourself in some way? It doesn't have to be through success. It can literally just be in like what you've put out. Have
Yeah.
you proven yourself to be dedicated to wanting this to be your passion? Because if it's not, then like we're not going to have good conversations, like first and foremost.
Yeah.
So like, are you really passionate about what you do? Are you taking your own initiative to create that world for yourself? And is that world going to be somewhere that I would like to step into as well? Because when we collaborate, it's not just like we're bringing our audiences together. It's like literally me as a person having to go into your world and you kind of come into mine. So like, do we have you established that for yourself, and do I like that? So that's just sort of fundamental. In terms of requests, I don't do Viking stuff anymore because the world around that I did not enjoy. When
Mm,
I did I've done some Viking things, and I really did not feel comfortable or safe in that environment. I'm probably going to get nipped in the bud for saying this out loud, but I just did not feel safe. And so that's a big hard no for me when people request stuff from, like do Valhalla Calling. I'm like, no, no. I'm not gonna
okay.
do this. There's a lot of like overlap between like I've just seen I saw the most misogynistic, conservative, scary stuff on
Mm,
in the comment section of that video.
yikes.
Nope, never doing that again. At this point, if I don't like the song, I'm not gonna do it. I think that's just sort of a generic thing. And with TikTok before, if enough people requested something and I didn't like it, I would do it. But now I'm just like, no.
No.
I also am at the point where I'm putting forward more of my original music, and so I want to figure out how to take suggestions better from people in that context because that's relatively new for me. And but yeah, in terms of cover requests, yeah, I think if someone asked me to do Drunken Sailor now, I probably wouldn't do it. But I'm so glad that I did because that track slaps and I love singing it. But
Yeah.
for example, like this tour will be the last time I sing that song in
Okay.
a show, you know? Because I'm like, it does bring about a certain, like people make assumptions about you as a musician as soon as they see that kind of cover,
Sure.
and then they dig deeper and they're like, oh wait, like she doesn't just do the popular stuff, you know? And I think that's really important. But it can create an image of me that I don't really agree with anymore. And so like Hoist the Colors, I'm never doing that in a show ever. Like it slaps so hard. It is such a good track, but I think there's just like certain things that I have done in the past where I was all for them at the time, and now it's like I'm gonna be, if someone like yelled at a show, sing Hoist the Colors, I'd be like, no. Or like the
Yeah.
thing is when people are like, translate that, I'm like, hell no, you know. Like I have to have boundaries around how I evolve as an artist. And if people are like, I want to drag you back to where you were, I'm like, what good is that going to do either of us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not gonna be conducive to anything. So, and I'm being very like honest about this right now, but I think it's really important to again set that standard for how I get treated. You know, which is like if
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
like the new stuff that I'm doing, I'm so sorry. But continue to listening to the old stuff. It's not going away,
Yeah.
and I'm really really proud of it. You know, like
Yeah.
it's very good, and I did it because I thought it was good, and I released it at the time because I thought it was good, and it did align with who I was, and now I'm doing something else, and that's okay. You know,
Absolutely.
all of those things can coexist, and so I think the internet has a hard time letting people evolve, and so I've been very vocal about the hard no's and the hard yeses that come up with the process of evolution.
Yeah.
And the fact that my hard no's now are very different from my hard no's before. And and I think that's okay. You know?
Totally. Absolutely. Great. What a great answer.
Yeah.
Nailing these.
Hey, but
Okay, this is from
Taylor Slaps. I want to make sure people don't think that I'm not grateful for that. I absolutely love that track.
All right, this is from Miss Chuck Terry. What kinds of music were you exposed to growing up and some of your favorite? We've kind of talked about that a lot. So the second part of this question is some of your favorite bands and artists in high school specifically.
Uh,
If you could
yeah,
harken back to those times.
there was a band called Groove Lily that doesn't exist anymore. But it was a husband and wife duo, and then it was a electric violin, keys, and drums. And I loved their music so much. Valerie Vigoda was the violinist. I still really love her work. And they created a show called Striking 12 that is so brilliant. And they always towed the line between like musical theater and pop, I guess. And like I don't really know what their genre was. I guess it was pop, but I really enjoyed it and enjoyed the creativity of that instrumentation and how just sort of different it was, and it kind of you couldn't really pin it down. So yeah, I loved Groove Lily in high school. That's the one that I just sort of immediately think of where I'm like, oh, I was a fangirl of this, you know. Yeah, that's the only one that I can immediately think of. But I listen to a lot of musical theater. I listen to a lot of like pop, and like Kelly Clarkson was one of my faves when I was younger, and
Amazing.
yeah, Sarah Bareilles, Pentatonics once they started releasing music.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was just like a little musical theater a cappella folk nerd. Yeah. I didn't have a piece of pop music on my phone until Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson when I was like 12. My little iPod mini was like all Celtic music and musical theater. It was great. It
Awesome.
was a great vibe.
Awesome. iPod Mini. I also had an iPod Mini.
Literally a brick. A
Yeah.
color brick.
Just
Yeah.
a brick with music on it. I'm like, that's what I want nowadays.
Yeah.
Like the phone, there's too much on the phone.
There's other
Just give me
things
a
that I'm
little,
expecting. Yeah.
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 I've
That's
thought
what
about trying to find like an iPod Nano even that just
I had.
shuffles. You put like
Yeah.
100 songs and it just shuffles.
Yeah.
Like that's great.
I had an iPod Shuffle that had just and a few other things, and it was fantastic. I would listen to that like on the plane in
Yep.
particular. Or it was like, I don't need my phone out right now. Like, let
Yeah.
me yeah, it was
You
great.
didn't need Wi-Fi. It's just the music is just on there.
Yeah, it
That was
was
a
great.
great thing. We
Yeah,
should bring it back.
yeah, yeah.
All right, but before we sign off, what does everyone need to know about this tour coming up?
That it's happening. No, it's gonna be it's September 6th through October 19th. Where I think it's like 25, 27 different cities. It is wide. Um, the shows are, my hope is that you walk out a little bit lighter than when you came in. I hope you like I want people to levitate out of the theater. And one of the things that I love so much about my audiences is that a lot of people like have a knowledge of folk music, and in sessions you'll have someone walk in and sing the saddest song you've ever heard, and the whole room is quiet, and then they'll play a reel afterwards, and everyone's like, "Wee!" And starts like clapping along. And my audiences thus far have been so willing to go with us wherever we're going to go. And it's like, well, I always tell people, I'm like, you are going to hear really sad stuff, really thought-provoking stuff, and you're going to rock out. You know, like that is something that I love to be able to give to people, is being able to acknowledge the complexity of like, that's life. You know, like sessions are such a little molecule of what life is, to hold grief and joy
Yeah.
same space. And so that's really something that we do with this show, and we do that by singing together. We do that by very consciously creating the experience, and I hope that people can settle into that and enjoy it. So yeah, that's my hope. And I cannot wait to see people on the road. I like we're going to cities that I've never been to before, and the idea that I'm gonna get to actually see the faces of some people that have literally followed me since that, like, we've grown up together, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's something that I'm just so excited for, and really cannot wait to do. So it's gonna be great.
Awesome. And I assume all dates can be found on your website for the
Yes.
tour? Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's melindatour.com. I will double check that is
Okay.
the yeah.
We'll have it in the description.
Amazing.
Are you coming anywhere in the Southwest, perchance?
Yes, I am. Where I'm coming
Anywhere
to.
near Phoenix or Arizona, any kind of Arizona?
Yep, we've got Phoenix, we've got Denver, we've got LA, we've got Sacramento. It's a little higher up, but yeah,
Hmm.
then
All right. Well, I will be in Phoenix in the fall, so
yes, come. That'd be
yeah,
so.
I'll see if I can come. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. No,
All right.
I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, Melinda, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a wonderful, valuable, educational conversation. I hope people leave this conversation feeling lighter
Yeah,
than they
yeah.
came in. So, any final words from you, and then we will sign off.
This was a blast. I loved learning about opera along the way. So thank you for being willing to actually have a conversation, in an environment like this. This was really special and really fun. So thank you.
Awesome. Absolute joy. All right. Well, I'll keep you posted on when this is going public, and until then,
Amazing. Alrighty. You take care.
bye bye.
Bye, everybody.